Honorable judges, respected opponents, member of the House, as the Prime Minister, my name is Vania. I will begin this debate by defining and interpreting the motion, and then I will present the case for opening government. My Deputy Prime Minister, Talitha, will later respond to the opposition claims and further strengthen our case. This House supports the implementation of a 4-day work week without salary reduction. By a 4-day work week, we mean that employees work 4 days instead of 5, with a proportional reduction in total working hours. For example, a standard 40-hour work week may be reduced to approximately 32 to 36 hours, depending on national standards. By without salary reduction, we mean that employees retain the same monthly salary and employment benefits and are not required to compress the same workload into fewer days. With this definition in place, the core question for this House is not whether people will work fewer days, but whether we'll work better. Opening government firmly believes that a 4-day work week allows workers to be healthier, more focused, and ultimately more productive. Therefore, I will begin with my first argument. Better work-life balance increases productivity. One of the strongest reasons to support a 4-day work week is that better work-life balance directly increases productivity. This is not theoretical claims. This is supported by large-scale, peer-reviewed studies across multiple countries. A 2025 peer-reviewed studies reported by ABC News tracked 2,896 employees across 141 organizations in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the US, Ireland, and the UK. For 6 months, these employees reduced their weekly hours by about 5 to 8 hours depending on the company. The outcomes were very clear. Employees who reduced their work week by 8 or more hours reported less burnout, better mental health, and higher job satisfaction. And why does this matter for productivity? Because burnout and poor mental health are directly linked to slower task completion, higher error rates, lower creativity, and reduced motivation. When people feel mentally healthy and less exhausted, they perform better during the hours they do work. This shows that shorter hours are not a barrier to productivity. They are a condition for higher quality labor. Iceland ran one of the largest 4-day work week trials in history between 2015 and 2019, involving over 2,500 workers, about 1% of the national workforce. Workers reduced their hours from 40 to 35 per week with no pay cuts. The results were productivity maintained or improved across most workplaces. Service delivery stayed stable or got better. Workers experienced lower stress, better well-being, and more time for quality time. And then the impact was so positive that 89% of the population eventually gained the right to shorter hours. This proves that fewer hours do not reduce the economic output. In many cases, they increase it by creating healthier, more focused employees. My second argument is economic benefits at the national level. The opposition will likely claim that reducing worker days harms the economy. But evidence from the real-world business shows the opposite. A 4-day work week actually strengthens national economic performance, and I will explain this through 3 layers of economic impact. The first one, reduce business costs. With one less day of office operations, companies naturally spend less on electricity, water, food subsidies or canteen costs, transportation allowances, cleaning, and maintenance. A UK survey in 2021 found that 96% of businesses offering a 4-day work week successfully reduced their overall costs. This is extremely important in an era where operational expenses, especially energy, are rising. A 4-day week becomes a practical cost-cutting measure that does not compromise productivity or worker morale. Lower operating costs equal higher profit margins equal stronger national economy. Number 2 is healthier and more stable workforce. Burnout is one of the biggest hidden economic burdens. When employees burn out, companies pay for higher medical claims, sick leave, resignation, requirement expenses, onboarding and training new staff. High turnover is expensive and slows down the productivity. A 4-day work week lowers burnout significantly, meaning fewer sick days, fewer resignation, and more experienced staff staying long term. Number 3 is increased consumer spending. Lower HR costs free up company budgets for innovation, and when people gain one extra free day, they don't just sleep, they go out, travel domestically, shop, dine, attend events, and use services that stimulate the economy. This creates a multiplier effect in key sectors like retail, entertainment, tourism, F&B, and wellness industry. More demand in this industry supports job creation and economic circulation. So, instead of shrinking the economy, a 4-day work week reallocates worker energy into sectors that generate growth. For all these reasons, the opening government strongly supports the implementation of 4-day work week without salary reduction. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable adjudicators and fellow debaters. As the first speaker, I will present our stance on the 4-day work week policy. In this debate, we accept the definition of the policy as presented. However, our responsibility is to show that implementing a 4-day work week brings more harm than benefits when applied in real-world conditions. Before I move to my argument, let me respond to some points from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister claimed that a 4-day work week improves productivity through better work-life balance. While better mental health can support performance, this assumption does not apply equally to all sectors. Most of the studies they mentioned were conducted in pilot programs and focus on office-based or public sector workers, where productivity is measured by output rather than hours. In contrast, sectors such as healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and public service rely on physical presence and continuous operation, where fewer working days cannot be released by efficiency alone. Therefore, the evidence only shows limited context-specific benefits and does not justify a mandatory 4-day work week for all industry. And then, the Prime Minister also argued that a 4-day work week strengthens the national economy by reducing business costs and increasing consumer spending. However, this claim ignores the biggest financial burden facing companies, which is labor costs. While costs such as electricity or cleaning may decrease slightly, salaries and benefits remain the same even though working hours are reduced. These operational savings are too small to offset the higher cost per hour. Furthermore, the assumption that people will spend more money on their additional day off is highly uncertain. Workers who are anxious about heavier workloads, job stress, or job security are more likely to save than to spend. This shows that the economic benefits described by the government are not guaranteed and are uneven across different groups of workers. And then, my first argument is a 4-day work week increased labor costs lead to job insecurity. A 4-day work week means employees work fewer hours but get the same salary. This makes labor more expensive to company because they pay the same money for less work. For many businesses, especially small and medium companies, labor costs are already very high. When this cost increase and productivity does not clearly improve, companies face financial problem. A study in France showed that when hourly labor costs increase by about 6%, companies cut employment by about 2%, reduce total working hours by about 9%, and so sales drop by about 4%. Many firms also rely more on machines instead of workers. Similarly, warnings from South Korea show that shortening the work week to 4-5-day system can lead to hiring freeze and staff reduction. This proves that higher labor costs often result in fewer job opportunities. To survive, companies may stop hiring new workers or even lay off existing employees. This means a policy that is meant to help workers can actually put their job at risk. Most workers prefer stable jobs and steady income rather than an extra day off. A shorter work week is not helpful if it increases unemployment. In addition, higher labor costs can push companies to replace workers with machine, outsource jobs, or move their business to countries with cheaper labor. In the long run, this reduces job opportunities and harm workers instead of protecting them. And then my second argument is the policy is inherently unfair and sector biased. A 4-day work week does not work equally across all sectors. This policy may suit office jobs with flexible tasks, but it is not suitable for jobs that require physical presence and continuous service, such as healthcare, education, manufacturing, retail, and customer service. In this sector, reducing working day disrupts daily operations. Employers are forced to either hire more workers, which increase costs, or push the same workload into fewer days, leading to longer hours and higher stress. Evidence from the real-world trials support this concern. According to BBC reports on the UK 4-day workweek pilot, many labor-intensive and service-based companies struggle to maintain enough staff when employees were off work, especially during sick leave or holidays. In several cases, workers had to complete the same amount of work in fewer days, creating very long, exhausting workdays. Because of these operational problems, some companies eventually withdrew from the trial. As a result, while office workers may enjoy better work-life balance, workers in manual and service sectors face heavier workloads and burnout. This creates inequality between workers in different sectors. A labor policy that benefits only certain sectors while burdening others cannot be considered fair or inclusive. To wage this debate, we have shown that a 4-day work week without salary reduction can cause real problems. It increases labor costs, puts jobs at risk, and doesn't work fairly across all sectors. This harm affects many workers in the long term, while the government's benefits are uncertain and limited. For this reason, the harm outweighs the benefits, and this House opposed the motion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will now respond to the opposition claims and then present my two arguments in support of the motions. The opposition argues that a 4-day workweek will increase labor costs and lead to job losses. However, this claim is not supported by real-world evidence. In countries like Iceland, where workers shifted from 35 until 36 hours per week, productivity increased while no jobs were lost. In fact, productivity rose by around 1 until 2%. This is also reflected in the UK 4-day workweek trial, where 92% of 61 companies continued the policy after the trial ended because output remained stable or improved. This clearly shows that businesses can adapt this by working more efficiently, not by cutting jobs. Older studies from France and South Korea are often mentioned, but they are not a fair comparison. France focused on mandatory hour cuttings without flexibility, while modern trials such as Microsoft Japan redesign workflows and reduce meetings, which leads to 40% increases of productivity. Therefore, instead of causing job losses, a 4-day work per week strengthens the employment stability by reducing burnout and improving efficiency. The opposition also says that a 4-day work week is unfair and cannot work in sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and services. However, the evidence shows the opposite. First, a 4-day work week is not one fixed system. Different workplaces use different methods. Some rotate shifts, some use for 10-hour days, and others reduce hours while improving how work is organized. Because of this flexibility, between 86% and 90% of companies in global trials choose to keep the policy even though they came from many different sectors. In healthcare, burnout is extremely high, affecting about 76.8% of workers. A large study by Boston College involving 2,896 workers, including healthcare and service staff, found that when schedules were reorganized, workers feel better and productivity did not decrease. In Iceland, hospitals use staggered shifts So patient care continued as normal while staff stress levels went down. In manufacturing, the policy also works. In the United States, Machino Saurus adopted a 4-day week in 2023 and fewer employees quit by rotating teams. Another companies like Advanced Rafi keep productions level the same after more than a year trying the 4-day work. Workers reported feeling less stressed, and in the UK, trial factories were included also, and around 90% of them continued to 4-day work week after the trial. In retail and service jobs, stable schedules make a big difference. Study shows that when work hours are predictable and slightly shorter, productivity and sales can increase. Some critics mentioned that a few companies left the UK trial, but including those reported by the BBC. However, these cases were very rare. Overall data from the trial shows that company revenue rose by 1.4%. Employee turnover fell by 57%, and there was no evidence of job losses or increases in inequality. Frontline workers reported the same improvement in health and job satisfaction as office workers. The evidence is clear. When implemented flexibility, the 4-day work per week can work across all sectors. It is fair, practical, and also inclusive. Building on my teammates' point that a 4-day work week improves productivity and economic outcomes, my first argument explained this. The 4-day work week improves public health. Long working hour increases stress, reduce sleep, and limit time for physical activity. These factors directly can harm worker performances and increase healthcare costs. By reducing the work week without cutting pay, workers are healthier, more focused, and more productive. If evidence from 2023 UK trial by 4-day week global shows that 46% of workers felt less fatigue, 37% experienced better mental health, and 30% reported improved physical health. Similarly, the Iceland trials found lower stress levels and better sleep quality among workers. Healthier workers take fewer sick days and are more engaged at work. This directly reinforces my teammates' argument that productivity increases and businesses benefit economically. And my second argument is a 4-day work week helps companies keep their employees and reduce the cost of hiring new workers. When workers have better work-life balance, feel happier at work, and experience less burnout, they are more likely to stay in their jobs for a long time. This means companies spend less money and time on recruiting, training new employees, and dealing with empty positions that reduce productivity. In a global 4-day work week trial, it involved 141 companies and nearly 2,900 workers. 71% of employees reported feeling less burnt out, and after the trial, 86% of companies decided to continue using the 4-day work week. In Iceland's large-scale trials from 2015 to 2019, which involved about 2,500 workers, employee turnover dropped significantly, while worker well-being improved and productivity stayed the same or increased. Similarly, UK companies that adopt the 4-day workweek saw employee turnover by an average 57%, according to the Henley Business School. This result shows that the shorter work weeks help companies retain talent and save money. By keeping experienced employees, business can save an estimated $1,900 to $6,000 per employee each year. It makes the 4-day work week a smart and cost-effective business decision. In conclusion, the evidence shows that a 4-day work week works. It increases productivity, it improves public health, it helps companies retain workers and reduce business costs. For this reason, this House will strongly support the motions. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable educators, and good morning, fellow debaters. As the deputy leader of opposition, I will rebut the new arguments from the deputy prime minister and explain why the harms of this policy still outweigh its benefits. So, the first one is I will rebut some of arguments from the deputy of prime minister. So, the deputy prime minister argues that a 4-day work week improves public health, which then leads to higher productivity and economic growth. While we accept that shorter working hours can improve individual well-beings, these claims does not hold at the national level. So first, the link between better health and higher productivity is indirect and uncertain. Feeling healthier does not automatically increase output, especially in sectors where productivity depends on time, machinery, or service demand. A nurse, factory worker, or retail employee cannot serve more people simply because they feel less stressed. And second, in many labor-intensive sectors, work is not reduced but compressed. Workers face longer shifts, higher daily intensity, which increases physical strain and fatigue. This directly contradicts the claim that the policy universally improves health. And most importantly, even if health benefits appear in the long terms, the economic costs are immediate. Employers must pay the same wages for fewer hours from day one. When certain costs are compared to uncertain future benefits, these arguments fail to justify the policy. And the next, I will rebut also the arguments from the Deputy Prime Minister. So the Deputy Prime Minister also claims that a 4-day work week reduces employee turnover and saves recruitment costs. However, this benefit only applies to a limited group of stable, high-skilled workers. So employee retention only matters if companies can afford to keep workers. When labor costs rise to unchanged pay and fewer hours, many businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, will focus on survival, not retention. And this leads to hiring freezes, fewer entry-level jobs, and greater reliance on automation or outsourcing. And moreover, lower turnover means nothing for co-workers who are never hired or lose their jobs. Young, low-skilled, and temporary workers are the most affected. And they value job access and security far more than retention benefits enjoyed by insiders. And finally, the government assumes reduced burnout always leading to retention. In reality, when workloads are intensified and compensate for fewer working days, stress may remain or even increase. In such cases, turnover does not disappear, but it simply shifts to more vulnerable sectors. And the first argument that I'm going to say is about economic risks are more certain than health or environmental benefit. So even if the government's health and environmental claims are particularly true, they remain conditional and uneven. In contrast, the economic harms are immediate and unavoidable. Reducing working hours while keeping full pay automatically increases labor costs per hour for all employees from day one. And this happens regardless of whether productivity actually improves. However, these productivity gains are not guaranteed across all sectors. In many industries, output is limited by time, machinery, or service demand, making it unrealistic to expect workers to simply work better to compensate for fewer hours. And when productivity does not rise, companies must absorb higher costs without additional output. And this puts pressure on wages, hiring, and business sustainability. A responsible public policy should prioritize stability and predictability, not ask the entire economy to gamble on optimistic assumptions in exchange for uncertain benefits. And my next argument is about the policy undermines service quality and public access. So beyond economic risks, a 4-day work threatens the quality and accessibility of essential public services. Many sectors do not produce measurable output, but provide continuous services, such as healthcare, education, public transport, and government administration. And these sectors rely on stable schedules and consistent staffing. When working days are reduced, they face two choices: hire more staff at higher costs or compress the same workload into fewer days. Both options reduce service quality. So therefore, even if the policy promises better work-life balance, it does so at the expense of service reliability and public access, failing to protect the public interest. So at the end of this debate, the government asks us to risk economic stability and service quality for benefits that are uncertain and uneven. When a policy raises labor costs, threatens jobs, and weakens essential public services from day one, it cannot be justified. And for this reason, we, the opposition, firmly reject the motion. Thank you.
Honorable adjudicators, fellow debaters, and audiences. Before I start with my argument, I will review the opening opposition's argument. First, the opening opposition claimed that higher labor costs will lead to job losses, citing studies from France and South Korea. But this comparison is fundamentally flawed. These studies look at mandatory, rigid hour cuts imposed top-down. Our example, as proven in the UK, Iceland, and Australia, is about smart redesign. Companies don't just pay the same for less work. They pay the same for smarter, more focused work. The UK trials saw revenue increase by 1.4% and the turnover drop by 57%. This is not a sign of a healthy business. This is the sign of a healthy business, not one bleeding jobs. The opposition's fear is based on a static view of labor, where hours equals output. We operate in a dynamic economy, where well-being and efficiency drives output. Second, both opposition speakers argue that policy is unfair and sector biased. They say it only works in offices and fails in healthcare, retail, or manufacturing. This is simply contradicted by the evidence provided by the Deputy Prime Minister. Trials included these very sectors. Hospitals in Iceland use staggered shifts. Factories in the UK and the US maintain production. The 2025 trial in Indonesia included state-owned service companies. Did every single company succeed? No, but the overwhelming majority, over 90% in the UK trial, choose to continue. The policy's strength is its flexibility in an implementation and not one-size-fits-all mandate. The opposition defined fairness as identical treatment, but the true fairness is equitable outcomes, reducing burnout for nurses, improving retention in manufacturing, and giving retail workers predictable schedules. Our model delivers that. Finally, they claim it undermines the service quality and the public access. This assumes that the fifth day of our work is pure, undiluted quality. But in reality, our current 5-day burnout model, we see overworked nurses making errors, exhausted teachers struggling to prepare, and demoralized civil servants providing slow service. A 4-day week is a structural investment in service quality by ensuring the workforce is rested, healthy, and present. You cannot provide quality care for education with a depleted workforce. Our model builds a sustainable workforce. There's burnout. Now I will add 2 new layers to the already strong case built by the opening team. My first argument, the 4-day week is a strategic imperative for the talent and competitiveness in the 21st century. The Prime Minister spoke of economic benefits at a national level. I take this further. This is now a global competition for talent. The world's most innovative companies and countries are already adopting shorter work weeks. When Spain, Scotland, Japan, and New Zealand are running national trials, and companies like Kickstarter and Buffer are making it permanent. They are sending signal. We value sustainable productivity. If we reject this motion, we are not protecting our economy. We are making it less attractive for the next generation of skilled workers. A 2023 global survey by LinkedIn found that 63% of our professional workers would prioritize 4 days a week over a higher salary when choosing a job. We're at a turning point. Do we want to be a backwater clinging to the 40 hours industrial model, or a forward-thinking economy that attracts the best minds by offering better quality of life? This is not a cost, it is an investment in becoming the employer of choice in the global market. My second argument, it fosters more inclusive and equitable distribution of unpaid labor, particularly benefiting women and families. The Deputy Prime Minister powerfully argued for improved public health. I built on this by highlighting the social equity dimension. The current 5-day model disproportionately burdens those, often women, who carry the majority of unpaid domestic care and work. The relentless second shift is a primary driver for gender inequality. An extra weekday is not just day off, it is day for life. It enables shared parenting, reduce the need for expensive childcare, and allows for household management during open hours, and reduce the mental load that impedes workplace focus. Studies from the Iceland trial noted a significant positive impact on the gender equality at home. By giving everyone this time, we don't just reduce individual stress. We rebalance the invisible economy of our care work that currently holds half of our workforce back. This makes our entire labor force more engaged, more balanced, and truly more productive. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable adjudicators and fellow debaters. As a member of the opposition, I will defend our side's direction, briefly respond to the opening government, specifically refute the closing government, and finally explain why this motion should be rejected. From the beginning of this debate, the opposition has shown that mandatory 4-day work week creates economic risks and unequal outcomes across sectors. The government celebrates flexibility and successful trials. However, public policy must protect the whole economy, not only companies that are already strong enough to adapt. The opening government claims that the better work-life balance automatically increases productivity and economic growth. This assumption does not work at the national level. In many sectors, productivity depends on time, staffing, and physical presence, not motivation. Nurses, factory workers, and service staff cannot replace lost hours with focus because the government generalized office-based evidence to all industries. Their case is strictly weak. I will now directly respond to the extension brought by the closing government. First, they agree that flexibility and smart redesign solve labor cost problems. But flexibility does not remove fixed wages. Paying the same salary for fewer hours always increases hourly labor costs. Productivity gains may happen, but they are uncertain and uneven. A national policy cannot rely based on case adaptation. Second, they claim that trials across healthcare, manufacturing, and services prove the policy is fair. These trials only show that some workplaces can adapt, not that all can. Companies with fewer resources, limited staffing, or weaker management are excluded or forced out. This rewards already strong firms and punishes smaller and more vulnerable ones. Third, they say that economic benefits like lower 6 days and turnover are already certain. However, these benefits matter only if companies survive long enough to enjoy them. For small and medium enterprises, cost increases happen immediately, while benefits are delayed and uncertain. Policy certainty must protect the weakest actors, not only successful trial participants. Fourth, they argue that service quality improves because workers are more rested. This ignores understaffing. Fewer working days without more workers leads to compressed workloads or reduced coverage. Rest does not replace manpower. Essential services need sufficient staffing, not just better morale. Finally, closing government frames this policy as necessary for global talent competition and gender equality. But a national labor policy should not prioritize globally mobile, high-skilled workers and over locals and essential workers. And gender inequality is not solved by time alone. Without child care, support, and cultural change, unpaid labor remains unequal, simply rearranged into fewer days. For these reasons, the closing government extension fails. The government claims that this policy protects workers, but in reality, it shifts economic risk into them. The ILO has constantly warned that when working hours are reduced without proportional staffing increases, employers often respond by intensifying work, extending daily shift, or relying on flexible contracts. This leads to higher stress and job insecurity, especially in service and manual factors. In addition, reports from Eurofound shows that compressed work schedules often result in longer workdays and higher physical fatigue, particularly for frontline workers. While wage remains the same on paper, workers pay the price through increased pressure and reduced job stability. This shows that when productivity gains do not fully materialize, workers, not employers, absorb the risk. A responsible public policy should reduce vulnerability, not redistribute the rest downward. At the end of this debate, the government offers optimism and selective success stories. The opposition offers realism. This policy raises fixed labor costs, deepens inequality, weakens essential services, and shifts risk to workers in exchange for benefits that are uncertain and uneven. For this reason, the member of opposition firmly reject the motion. Thank you.
Honorable adjudicators, fellow debaters, and everyone here, thank you for giving me this chance. So, as the government whip, my job is to summarize our side case and defend the main arguments made by both proposition teams. And I will also highlight the powerful new examples that shows why a 4-day work week without pay cuts is not only possible but also beneficial for the workers, businesses, and society. First, go back to the core points from the opening propositions. So the studies from the countries like Iceland, UK, and Australia have proven that a 4-day work week leads to better work-life balance, less burnout, and higher productivity. And the companies see fewer sick days, lower staff turnover, and often save money on operational costs. So this is not just a theory, but these results have been seen in thousands of workers and hundreds of companies. And the second proposition team added that this policy will make our country more competitive. In today's global job market, skilled workers want jobs with better work-life balance. So a 4-day week helps attract the talent and supports the family, especially women who often do more unpaid work at home. This leads to fairer and more balanced workplaces. Now let me share a new example from the UK's 2024 national pilot. The trial involved 61 companies and nearly 3,000 of workers. The results were clear. After 6 months, 92% of the company decided to keep this 4-day week because the productivity stayed the same and even improved, and the employee turnover dropped by 57%. And there's one company, a small software firm, they report that their team become more focused and creative because they even launched a new product during the trial because their workers have more time for deep thinking and collaborations. Some say that this policy only works for office job, but evidence shows otherwise. In the UK trials, factories, healthcare providers, and retail stores, all of them are participate. Most found ways to make it work, such as rotating shifts or improving the work processes. The key is flexibility, not a one-size-fits-all rule. For example, a hospital on the Wallace use a staggered shift so the patient care stays strong and the staff stress drops significantly. Finally, let's not forget about the social benefits. When the workers have more time, they will spend their time in family, hobbies, and community activities. So this will create a multiplier effect and more demand for local businesses, more volunteering, and stronger communities. And in Spain, a national pilot shows that people use their extra time for shopping, traveling, and supporting local events, which is boosting the economy. So in conclusion, a 4-day work week without pay cuts is a smart, fair, and evidence-based policy. It will improve the worker's life, strengthen the economy, and makes our society more equal. And the UK's pilot is just one of many success stories to prove this. So based out of the data, the strong example, and also the argument that we have provided, we believe that our side deserves your support. Thank you.
Honorable adjudicators, fellow debaters, and member of the House. At its core, this debate is not about whether a 4-day work week can work in certain conditions. The real question is whether it is responsible, fair, and safe to implement as a broad national policy. On this question, the opposition has consistently shown that the harms are clear, immediate, and widespread, while the benefits presented by the government are conditional, selective, and uneven. From the opening opposition to the closing opposition, our direction has been consistent. A mandatory 4-day work week raises labor costs, threatens job access, and undermines essential services, particularly in labor-intensive sectors. The government never successfully disproved this core claim. Instead, they relied heavily on success stories from limited trials while ignoring structural risks at the national level. The government claims that better work-life balance automatically leads to higher productivity. However, the opposition clearly demonstrated that this logic does not apply equally across sectors. Opening opposition showed that productivity gains mostly come from office-based and high autonomy jobs where output is flexible. In contrast, sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and public services depend on time, staffing, and physical presence. A nurse, factory worker, or service staff cannot simply work faster to replace lost hours. The deputy leader of opposition strengthened this by showing that even if health improves, economic costs are immediate while productivity gains are uncertain. Employers must pay the same wages for fewer hours from day one, regardless of whether productivity actually rises. This means the government's productivity claim is speculative while the opposition's cost analysis is guaranteed. The opposition consistently proved that a 4-day work week increases labor cost per hour, which places pressure on businesses, especially small and medium enterprises. Opening opposition explained how higher labor costs historically lead to hiring freezes, layoffs, automation, and outsourcing. The government attempted to dismiss this by citing international trials, but the closing opposition correctly pointed out that these trials were selective, short-term, and voluntary. The member of opposition powerfully reframed this issue by explaining insider-outsider inequality. Lower turnover may benefit existing workers, but it directly harms young people, low-skilled workers, and job seekers by reducing job openings and entry points into the labor market. A labor policy that protects insiders while locking outsiders out is not socially just. At the end of this debate, the waging is clear. The government offers potential benefits that depend on ideal conditions, flexible jobs, and long-term adjustments. The opposition shows immediate risks: higher labor costs, reduced job access, pressure on small businesses, and weaker public services. Public policy should be judged on certainty, inclusivity, and risk management. On all three measures, the opposition is stronger. A policy that gambles national economic stability and service reliability for uncertain gains is not progressive, it is reckless. In summary, the opposition has proven that while a 4-day work week may work for some, it fails as a universal policy. It increases inequality between sectors, shifts risks onto workers, limits job access, and threatens essential services. For these reasons, and on the balance of arguments presented in this debate, the opposition firmly rejects the motion. Thank you.